Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and today, not really going to be looking at the house. I did my best to recreate the house maps that I've had on the other site, and from pretty much now on, I'm going to be using YapMS just because I like the map a little bit better. I can zoom in, even from the national view, go really in depth, and I like the contrast a little bit better, and I like the darker background. On 270 you can't have a darker background, which gives a little bit more contrast to the brighter colors. Anyway, so today I'm more going to be talking about what to expect from the fallout of last week's SCOTUS decisions. One in particular, though there's two. Obviously, if you like the content, or at least like the open discussion that I try to hold on this channel, likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help, and I greatly appreciate them. And I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We'll see how easy that is, considering that I have a full-time job that takes up most of my week. Most of my waking week. And, yeah. So, some of y'all know I didn't upload last week, and there's a reason for that. And it has to do with the fact that I was up in Pennsylvania, and I got back really late on Wednesday, and I just wanted to go to sleep, and I needed a day to recover from driving 500 miles. Well, not that many, but close to it. It's about 400-ish, counting the fact that I also went over the top of several mountains. That was fun. Yeah, no, I was like, why is my GPS taking me this way? And stopped off at one point and looked at my phone, pulled up an altimeter app that I have. I'm like, oh, good, I'm at 4,000 feet. Put it back in my pants, put the phone back in my pocket, and went down. And because I was up there for work, I didn't get to stick around as much as I wanted to and listen to discussions, all that stuff, pay attention to what's on television or radio. But at night, I did watch a little bit of television, and there was one ad that I saw, and it was for Fetterman. And Fetterman is, if his ad is anything to go by, he's running the type of campaign that the Democrats need to be running this year, particularly in Rust Belt states. Because he's not talking about culture war issues, like the majority of Democrats are right now. He's not talking about abortion. He's not talking about guns. You know what he is talking about? He's talking about energy. He's talking about fuel costs. He's talking about how the Rust Belt is down on hard times right now. He's localizing the race and talking about the issue, the kitchen table issues that for the longest time have been the Republicans' bread and butter for campaigning, other than, my guns and pro-life. And I think that's why he's doing so well in polling, despite the national environment being as bad as it is for Democrats right now. And I know what you're going to say, 2 of the 3 most recent generic ballot polls have Democrats up by 5 and 7. Number one, remember the grains of salt we talk about. Don't just take one poll and run with it. Or 2 polls and run with it. Look at the average. The average still favors Republicans by about 3%. That's number one. Number two, both of those pollsters, back when the average was about R plus 3.5, had the Democrats up by 4 and 5% respectively. So they were 8.5 and 7.5 points more favorable to the Democrats than the average that included those 2 polls. So if you exclude those 2, push Republicans up to 4, maybe 4.5% on average. That should tell you that those 2 pollsters are probably not the ones you want to be looking at. And really what that's showing is that the Supreme Court decision maybe gave the Democrats a tiny push. But The Economist, which has been pretty close to the average, maybe a point more favorable to Republicans than the average, just released a poll today that showed the opposite. Republicans gained 1% in their poll compared to their most recent polling of the generic ballot. So whether or not Democrats have been motivated, I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not sure there's any real momentum towards the Democrats due to the fallout from the New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin or Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health decision that were released at the end of last week. And honestly, this is where I'm going to get talking to giving advice to both parties' campaigning arms. And we're going to start with the Democrats, because I think the Democrats are probably, number one, they're probably not going to hear this, neither are the Republicans, to be honest. But I think the Democrats are more likely to ignore the advice that I'd give if I were on their teams. Because, you know the joke, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. There's a reason it's repeated so often, is it's somewhat true. I think the best thing for Democrats to do right now, if they want to have any chance of minimizing how bad they get beat in November, is not to make abortion or gun control the center of your campaign. As a matter of fact, that would be the biggest mistake they could make, is to focus on abortion and gun control. They should make a passing mention of those issues to, motivate their base and say, hey, remember, these issues also matter. But this is an issue, this is an election where it's really going to be about getting the soft Democrats who maybe don't care so much about culture war issues, or maybe think that the Democratic establishment and the left wing of the Democratic Party, which, by the way, is getting much more vocal and taking up and getting much more prominent within the party itself, so they're getting leadership positions. They're starting to pull the rest of the party to their side of the debate. They were talking about the progressive wing that is arguing for a lot of things that are just outside of the American mainstream, sometimes far outside of the American mainstream. And those moderate and soft Democrats, as well as independents, their biggest issue is inflation, it's gas prices, it's energy costs, it's food costs, it's inflation in the economy. And are we going to be able to afford the mortgage if the market crashes because the Fed is hiking interest rates at amounts not seen not seen in 30 years? Do I buy groceries or do I buy gas to get to work? Oh, that's great, I got a raise, still doesn't cover the bills. That type of voter. And if all Democrats talk about, or the majority of their time is spent talking about abortion and gun control, these people are going to look at them and they're going to say, are you fucking dumb? Are you paying attention to what's going on in this country right now? We've got record overdose deaths. So you should be talking about drug trafficking, specifically of fentanyl, which is coming across the border. So we need to be talking about border security, or at least checking vehicles that are coming across the border. I'm paying $5 a gallon for gasoline right now. Some places it's even higher than that. You know, my cousin up in D.C. or whatever is paying $6. And all you're talking about is abortion and guns. Yeah, I'm going to vote for the Republicans because at least they're acknowledging what the issues are. I may not agree with everything they're saying, but at least I agree that at least I agree with them what actually matters in this country. And therefore, Republicans, what you need to do is stay laser focused on inflation, gas prices, food prices, energy costs, and whatever the Democrats say, put a little bit on border security. Wouldn't hurt, especially in some of these working class districts in the Rust Belt, like in Flint, Michigan, near Toledo, in Iowa, in rural Illinois, places like that. Maybe Gary, Indiana, too. If you can focus on that, that'd be great for your party. Republicans also need to continue to make inroads with the Latino population in this country. Do Spanish language messaging in those markets. So the Rio Grande Valley, Florida, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, particularly in the border districts. Highlight your position, highlight your commitment to entrepreneurial spirit, to family values that Latinos in these areas really hold up true. And just let the Democrats campaigning ruin everything they talk about. Because the Democrats don't quite realize that they don't really align culturally with a lot of Hispanic voters. Because unlike, say, Biden and Pelosi, a lot of these Latino voters are Catholic. They actually listen to the catechism. They actually agree with the church that abortion is wrong. So if the Democrats want to make as one deep of the protest crowds that had Cori Bush, representative from St. Louis, and a few other prominent Democrats, or at least well-known Democrats, with them outside the Supreme Court, that they wanted abortion on demand up to birth, let the Democrats campaign on that. Let the Democrats do what they always do, Republicans. To quote Sun Tzu, when your opponent is making a mistake, don't stop him. And Democrats, whatever you do, yeah, like I said, I know you're not going to listen to me, but for the love of all that's holy, you probably want to try to talk, basically just ignore the Supreme Court and, you know, abortion, Roe v. Wade, and the gun case, because guess what? If all you do is talk about that, or those are the center points of your campaign, you're not going to raise the prominence of those issues. You're just going to give ad fodder to the Republicans. You're going to give ad fodder saying, look, while you're struggling to pay for gas, this is what the Democrats think you should be caring about. Not your families, not how you're going to get to work, not how you're going to put food on the table. They're not talking about your kids' education. We may not agree on how to solve these issues, but at least we agree that these are the main issues. And honestly, I don't think the Democrats are going to do it because I don't think the Democrats have that kind of self-control. And honestly, I could legitimately see Henry Cuellar losing. Even though he's the type of Democrat who, number one, is a great fit for his district, but he's also one of a handful of Democrats who understands the issues facing his constituents. He could lose simply because of the party he's a part of. Like, I'm not even kidding. If he switched his partisan registration to Republican and ran as a Republican down, I think that would actually increase his odds of getting reelected. That's how bad it is for the Democrats. That there's some Democrats out there that their chance of reelection would be increased by switching to the Republicans. Henry Cuellar being a prime example. But anyway, that's about it. I'm going to end it here. I hope you all have a very, very nice day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.